Hello and welcome to Merryweather Knitting. My name is Gabriella and today is a very exciting day because as of right now, my very first knitting pattern, my very first shawl design has been released. It's available online. This is such an exciting day for me and it's such a long time coming. I've shared the process of designing my very first knitting pattern over the past few months. It's been I think over half a year. It's been over 6 months that I've been in the process of designing this shawl. And the shawl isn't very complicated, but I took my time and I really enjoyed every step of the way of designing this piece. And so I'm just so excited to have it ready and available to share with you. And I thought I would just make a video all dedicated to this shawl today because today is the big day and I'm just in full celebration mode. I'm just so thrilled and really excited about the fact that this is, out there in the world. It's something that I had hoped to do and it's finally come to fruition, so it's so wonderful. Now the shawl is the one I'm wearing right now over my shoulders, and honestly, I love wearing it over my shoulders like this. This is one of my favorite ways to wear shawls. I love triangular shaped shawls. I love kind of those traditional shawl shapes. I always picture the characters of, the Bronte sisters characters or Jane Austen characters always wrapped up in a shawl, wandering outside or sitting at their desks and writing or reading or, doing things like that. So I always have that kind of sense whenever I wear a shawl like this. And I love to wear it like this just indoors in the house when I'm a little chilly, and just putting it over my shoulders is so nice and so elegant. But also if you're out and about and you just need a little extra layer, a shawl worn like this is so lovely. But it is a very nicely sized shawl. I wanted it to be big enough that it could be worn comfortably over the shoulders for many people, but also one that could just be worn like around the neck, which is the way that I've been wearing it a lot. This shawl has quickly become one of my most worn, absolute favorite winter accessories, and I've just been wearing it like a scarf, kind of like this kind of shawl just around the neck like this, as you probably are used to. Maybe you've worn shawls like this, just kind of like in a scarf style under my coat, and it keeps me so toasty warm. It's so soft and plush and wonderful because there's lots of fabric, so it just keeps me very cozy and warm. But this shawl was just such a fun shawl to design and knit. I think I'll show it to you in the big picture so that you can see how it looks all kind of a little farther away. I'll try to step back so that you can see it. This is how it looks complete. It's just, like I said, a big triangular shaped shawl, traditional and timeless and very lovely in that, in a very nice kind of, as far as the shaping goes, I feel like you get into a nice rhythm with a triangular shaped shawl. And that kind of the shaping becomes very just rhythmic and natural and almost mindless. But this is not a super mindless project. With each different section, I found that I got into a rhythm with each one and it became something I could knit while I was on the go, or, even when I was like watching TV or listening to something, I could knit it along the way. But it definitely takes a little bit of intention because there are different sections with different textures. And this shawl, the whole concept of this shawl was inspired by a very special place that my husband and I like to visit with our daughter. It's the old ruins of a very old church here in Germany. And the ruins, I think that there's, a little plaque there which talks about, the history of that little location. But it is, I think it was built around the 1100s or so, maybe a little bit earlier, and now all that's left are, stones, and it's really tucked away. It's a very kind of hidden place, and it was found because my husband heard about it from another colleague of his, and it was really hard to find because there weren't like directions online or anything, and now I feel like we're so used to being able to just easily have access to any landmark or anything we want to see or go anywhere we want to go to, but that wasn't the case with this location. We really had to go and search for it and find it, and it's so quiet and empty and beautiful, and so we love to go there different times of year and just walk around and have a little picnic nearby because it's so peaceful and calm and beautiful, and seeing the ruins of the church and the stone carvings that are left, it's really inspiring because for a lot of people back then they weren't literate, and so seeing like the carvings on the church walls would be how they like learned the gospel, how they learned different, that's how they were kind of, how they read, because they could just see that. So it's just so interesting, and it's so powerful and beautiful. And I think it was probably, at that time back then, a central location for the community who lived there, who, are gone. But of course it was also a church for many centuries after that time, at least up until the 1700s, I think. But yeah, now it's just ruins. But we love to go there, and in the springtime, right now, there are all these tiny little snowdrops popping up all over, and it's so undisturbed and beautiful and just lovely. And so I was very inspired by this location, and very inspired by just the ambiance, the peacefulness, the history. And I was also inspired because here in Germany, where I live, there are just apple trees everywhere that pop up, and they're kind of hidden and in abandoned places, and there isn't really an apple tree in this place with these ruins. But I imagined, what if there had been an apple tree here? Because there are some places that you just see, and there are these, in late summer and early autumn, there are just these apple-laden trees. Like the branches are just drooping because of all of the apples on them, and then there are apples all over the ground, and it's kind of like, it's just so beautiful and just gorgeous and amazing in a way, because you just see the apple tree in its natural state rather than being, plucked. Or I love going apple picking, but when I see those kind of apple trees that pop up in the wild, obviously I think a lot of them have been planted and just forgotten after a long time. I know in some cases, in certain neighborhoods near where we live, people have gotten, a little bit too old to be able to go out and pick their apples and things like that. So there are different reasons why that happens, but I just imagined an apple tree there in these ruins, and I was just so inspired by the concept. And so I just imagined going there and picking a basket full of apples. And so I kind of thought, I thought about like the lattice of a basket. The lattice as a shape is also one which I feel like reminds me a lot of buildings, old buildings, and I just really love the texture and the structure and that kind of thinking about a natural wicker basket. So I was really inspired by that. And I feel like my story and my explanation of the shawl design is getting a little bit crazy. So I hope you're following me and just bearing with me. But yeah, I was inspired by so many things, going to these beautiful ruins, and that's kind of what really sparked my desire to knit a shawl inspired by this place. So there are 3 sections in this design. The first section is a moss stitch section. It's beautifully textured, it's very soft. I really love moss stitch, and I really liked it because it also made me think of the ruins. There's lots and lots of moss which grows on the stones in the ruins, and it's very beautiful and soft and plush, and so I thought about that. And then the next section is this beautiful lattice section, which was inspired by baskets and kind of just structure, that kind of structure. And I really like that. I really wanted something a little structured in the design, because I think that adds something really beautiful to the softness of the shawl shape and wearing it. And so this lattice kind of shaping does that for me very much. And then the third section is a very little kind of lace border, which I will show you up close. And this is just a little layer of flowers, little tiny flowers. And this was inspired very much by the little flowers that pop up there in the ruins. Like I was mentioning, right now it's snowdrops, but at different times of year, there are just different little flowers, and they just kind of pop up in their different places. And so I was inspired by those as well, kind of like little path of flowers. And then there's a final border of moss stitch, which kind of just captures it all. And there is also a little edging. And between each section, there is a lateral braid called a Wickel braid, which separates each section, because I also wanted to add a little bit more structure and definition to each different area. And so you can see how the lateral braid looks up close. And this is a really fun technique to learn and to knit. I hope you can see it there. Maybe this one you can see a little bit better. I'll try to focus. But that little lateral braid is a really just a fun one to knit, and I have a video tutorial on the pattern as well included, which is here on YouTube, so you can learn how to knit this Wickel braid, this beautiful lateral braid out there as well if you're not already familiar with that technique. It's really such a fun one to learn, and I think it adds such a beautiful, interesting element to the design. But it's a wonderful shawl. I love it. It is knit out of DK weight yarn. This sample was knit out of Juniper Moon Farms Harriet, and that is a 100% baby alpaca yarn, which is stunning. It's really gorgeous and soft and plush, and I love the drape that it gives the shawl. It's absolutely beautiful, and it uses 3 skeins of that yarn, so 300 gram skeins, and that comes in at a little bit under, I think a little bit under 600 meters. I used up almost all 3 of those skeins. There's a tiny bit of yarn left, so you really do need quite a bit of yardage for this, but I mean, you can use absolutely any DK weight yarn which suits you. Of course, as long as you have enough yardage, it will be beautiful. I'm so thankful to the test knitters who tested this design. They were so helpful and so wonderful, and they really made the whole process they really perfected the design. There were so many things that they helped me work through, and it was just wonderful. So I'm so thankful to them, and it's just absolutely beautiful. So I'm so excited to share this pattern with you. And yeah, like I said, it could be any DK weight yarn that you like, any fiber, anything at all, as long as the yardage or meterage is kind of matches up. That's all that matters. And I mean, if you have scrap DK yarn, you could also try knitting a couple of different sections. Knit this section one color, and this section one color, and this section one color, or, you know, kind of maybe just try out different things. I think that would also be fun. There are lots of ways to make this design your own, I think. So I'm excited to see if you choose to knit this pattern. I really hope you will share it with me. Put it on, of course, Ravelry, but also on Instagram. You can always tag me there. I'd love to see it. And of course, if you ever have questions and you knit this shawl, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me. I'd love to help you and to talk about it. I'm so excited about it and so happy that I finally get to share it with you. That's my shawl, the Calville shawl. Oh, and I should say, so thinking about apple trees and kind of baskets of apples as this was, you know, inspired. And in the end, when I was knitting it, I shared in a previous podcast, the lattice also reminded me of apple pie crust and just kind of like pie crust. I loved that thought too, and it made it so delicious to knit it, especially in this gorgeous kind of buttery colorway. This is the buckwheat colorway in the Harriet yarn by Juniper Moon Farms. But I thought of these apples, and the name Calville comes from a specific kind of apples, which is a French apple sort, which are beautifully shaped and colored and just absolutely lovely. So that is why this is called the Calville shawl. It's named after Calville apples. So that is my shawl, that is my design. I'm so excited to share it with you. I hope you'll check it out. And of course, if you decide to knit it, you'll share it with me. I'd love to see your version of this shawl. But that's all I have for you today. I'm going to go and continue celebrating on my own by knitting on another project and maybe having a little cup of tea. I look forward to seeing you again soon next week on my next podcast episode. Take care. Bye.